Morning. Welcome to Unity of Charlotte. We are so delighted to have you here, whether you're in person, whether you're joining us online, and even if you may be watching us on our YouTube channel. We are happy that you are here. We have a mission statement at Unity of Charlotte that is our purpose, and we'd like to share that together as we say, please join me. Unity of Charlotte is the place where we nurture a deep and mature experience of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve. Love, grow, and serve. Do we have anyone here for the first time? Okay. Well, if you're online for the first time and you would like to get more information about Unity of Charlotte, put your information in the text or the chat box, and we'll have someone get that information to you, and welcome. Now, first let me tell you, there's all kinds of ways to find out more about what's happening at Unity of Charlotte, or if you're new to Unity, find out more about us. We have a website you can go to. We have a newsletter that comes out once a week you can sign up for on the website. We have a Facebook page. We'd love to have you visit. Be sure and like it when you visit. And we have a YouTube channel where you can go back and see any of our past Sunday services. We also have a bulletin board out in the hallway that I encourage people who are here to check out, because we have lots of things coming up during the holidays from other churches, activities, and we can't announce them all here. So please read that bulletin board, take a quick look, and see if there's anything you want to get involved in. And all right, our next slide, we have Love in Action, Unity in Giving. This is our end of year giving campaign. So we're launching it off this weekend. We've titled it Love in Action, Unity in Giving, because that's what we know our abundance to be. It is about putting our thoughts, our words, and our feelings of love in action, and we come together through our giving in so many ways. Now, our 2024 goal this year is $8,000 or more. We're totally open. It can be anything beyond that. We're not limiting it by that at all, but we have some very generous donors who have agreed to a matching fund. That means everything you give over and above your regular donations will be matched by these donors. So this is a really big gift to the Unity of Charlotte, and hopefully will inspire you to give as you are able. So that we can meet our end of year goal. Be sure to designate this gift as separate from your regular donations so that we are doing the matching correctly. We have envelopes in the collection plates that have little tags on them that say for the 2024 giving campaign, so you can use that. Or if you go online and give, we have a little button now you can push that says a drop-down menu, and you can select end of year giving campaign. Is that what it says? Giving Campaign 2024. So if you have any questions, you can come see us. So we are excited about that. Please keep that in your mind, especially as you're looking at doing your taxes for the end of the year. It's always a little helpful to have a little more to write off. All right. With that, let's move into prayer. I invite you to gently close your eyes. Take a moment to turn within, moving from your head to your heart. We have an intelligence in our heart that we sometimes forget about. It works beautifully with our head intelligence, but right now we're going to move into that space. Because what we want to bring, what we want to manifest, we want to be an example of in this world, is that light, the same light that Jesus shone years ago, the same light we see in those who are radiating from a sense of peace and love and unity. And I'm going to share a prayer with you that I received from a friend of mine called Sacred Center. So please open your hearts and let these words in. Oh God, out on the periphery, there is activity and strife and noise, a cacophony of controversy and concern and requirement, and deception and demand and duality surround me out there on the periphery. Out there, a billion stories are in the process of unfolding. You, God, are simultaneously there in the midst of them all, and in charge, both known and unknown. My attention is not required on the periphery. It is not mine to manage. God is there being God. I now withdraw my focus and concern from the circumference and retreat to my center. God is here, in the stillness, at my core. I am serene. We hold these words so precious in our heart and feel the power and presence of God here and now. We release concern of how this next week will go and envision instead, from the power of love, the manifestation of a growing unity, a coming together in a whole new way, and a moving forward as a united nation and a united people and a united world. And so it is. Please join with me in saying our unity prayer of oneness together. There is one presence and one power in my life and universe, God, the good omnipotence. It is this power that we claim and affirm in our lives as love. I now want to open the space up. If you have anyone you would like to lift in prayer, any prayer requests you have for yourself, you may now speak them out loud. Our nation, our leaders, unity. For all these prayers that have been lifted out loud or held in our hearts, we know and affirm the power of and presence of Spirit is working in and through each and every situation to bring about the highest good for all. And so it is. Amen. Please know that if you or a loved one is in need of prayer, that we have a prayer team that prays on prayer requests for 4 weeks. We have a prayer box where you can write your prayer request and leave it. It's right outside the door. We have a prayer form you can access through our newsletter or on our website. These prayers all go to the prayer team where they're held in their hearts and in their prayers. And 4 weeks later, they send it to Silent Unity, where it is held in prayer for another 30 days. Unity, 2 weeks for our prayer. Okay, 2 weeks. But the power of prayer is unlimited. So we know that that is an incredible way to support yourself and your loved one. So please feel free to utilize that service. And I'm going to now invite up Chris to read from our daily word.
Good morning, Unity of Charlotte. Daily Word, Sunday, November 3rd. Seasons. Throughout the seasons of life, my Christ light shines brightly. When the winter flows, the autumn harvest, and the sun's light grow weaker, what may resemble barren land is actually a time of rest and preparation for a new cycle of seasons. The sun's light and warmth change in ways that perfectly suit each season. My life, like the planet Earth, moves through seasons. The awakening of wonder in a childhood, exciting and sometimes stormy growth during adolescence and early adulthood, the achievements of my middle years, and the fulfillment of that maturity can bring. The Christ presence, the divine light within me, is my unfailing source of strength, understanding the comfort in every season of life. And God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for the days and years.
Jonathan is brave. Jonathan pushes past boundaries. Jonathan wants purpose in his life. He attempts to go beyond the routine. He seeks to live to the fullest. He embraces life's journey of self-discovery. Can you guess who Jonathan is? Yes. Yes. So I was going to give you a clue, but you didn't need the clue. The clue was that this is an allegorical story written in 1970. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and he's going to be part of this message as we talk about transition and as we talk about Dia de los Muertos and all that surrounds that, that idea. Jonathan seeks to master the art of flying, doesn't he? In his pursuit of learning who he is, he discovers spirituality. He embraces higher consciousness, and he dies and examines the concept of life after death. It's been a long time since I've read that story. The cool part about that story is it comes in three parts, and we're gonna hear this later on. It comes in three parts, the original. A few years ago, he added a fourth part to that story. I haven't read that fourth part. I'm going to have to go back, buy the updated book, and read what that fourth part is. But we're going to find out what happens to Jonathan later on in this talk. But what we are talking about is a transition that is limitless. Transition into the limitless. So we've all heard phrases such as, they've passed on, when we talk about our loved ones, the death of a loved one. Or maybe at times we say that we've lost someone that we were close to. And over the years, this has been a way for us to, I'm guessing, to avoid the finality of that idea of death. That's probably why we try and disguise it with those words. Within unity, instead, we use the expression of transition. We transition from this life. And we're going to explore why we use that word. Why is it different than those other terms that we use? Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. This is Myrtle Fillmore in her book, Healing Letters. And we've been studying that book in our Wednesday night book club. But she says, the way by which we shall ever be united with our loved ones is to come into the consciousness of life. That's how we will ever be united with our loved ones, is what she's saying. She talks about uniting with our loved ones who are no longer with us. And today we're going to explore a little bit more of that idea of death, of unity, Dia de los Muertos, and what that means in our lives. So Dia de los Muertos is celebrated. It's a 2-day celebration, November 1st and 2nd. The translation of that for many people is Day of the Dead. It's not quite Halloween. It's not quite All Saints' Day. It's its own thing that was originally and mainly celebrated in southern Mexico. It speaks of the custom of how to remember and deal with family and friends who have died. That is the purpose of it. It gives us outside of Mexico the opportunity to explore our concepts of transition and death as well. So I want to say that this is not about appropriating Halloween, this Halloween-like custom. It's not appropriating it from Mexico. It's not about cultural appropriation, but instead it's a learning opportunity for us. We're going to treat that today as a learning opportunity. Jorge Diaz, who is a professor of Latin culture, says that Halloween is about costumes and candy and scaring each other, and this has nothing to do with the Day of the Dead. He wants to separate that, and he wants to be sure everybody knows it has nothing to do with Dia de los Muertos. So, what is it? What does this include? What are the facets of this custom? So, I'm going to go through a couple of the obvious things, and we've actually incorporated one of the obvious things here. There are altars. They are called, in the Spanish language, they are called ofrendas, if I'm speaking that properly. Ofrenda. And this includes that altar with the deceased or with the transition's favorite food, its beverages that they liked, it's their pitcher, its marigolds are the flowers that are used, its memorabilia that that person might have had. And you're going to see that. Did we set it up in the cafe? Okay, so it's in the cafe. Enjoy that. I've got a picture. I've got a couple of pictures of loved ones who are no longer with us, and we can talk about that later on during that time. The second obvious thing is that families are encouraged to visit the grave sites with these gifts that we have on the ofrenda as well. But they come together with the whole family, and they have extended picnics at the graveside. They do a lot of cleaning up of the graveside. They make it look nice and clean. They decorate it, and they speak to their deceased relatives. They have conversations with them. And the whole family is there, like I said as well. The whole family, with the younger ones, are told stories of your relatives, your ancestors, and they want the younger generation to learn from those stories. These anecdotes that the younger family members can learn from. And then when they leave, a lot of times, this is something I didn't know, a lot of times pillows and blankets are left at the graveside so that the spirits can rest before they go back to their space. I thought that was kind of cool. There are three things that are maybe not so obvious about Day of the Dead. And the first thing is the relationships that we look at in terms of our own lives, those relationships. Educator James Comer wrote, no significant, and let's go ahead and go to that next slide. No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And that's what's being brought to the forefront with these visits to the graveside as well, are those relationships. And the next part of this, go ahead to the next click of that slide, is Marianne Williamson saying the same thing similar about relationships. Relationships are laboratories of the Spirit. Relationships are where we get to learn and grow, especially spiritually. So those relationships with those who have gone before are to be treasured for those learning opportunities that we had. and that time that we had with those people. The second not so obvious thing is the seeing the Christ within. Paul, in his second letter to the Corinthians, wrote, "Do you not realize about yourselves that Christ is in you?" That Christ is in you. And we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before. And those who have gone before are that Christ light as well within our lives. Within Unity, we know that we teach that we have that divinity within us. So did our ancestors, and so do those that come next as well. So that realization of that Christ nature is what we share with our ancestors. We learn from that. We realize that. Even from our crazy Uncle Eddie, we realize that Christ nature. So I think of my grandmother, I think of my uncle, I think of my great-grandfather who I'm named for. Those have that Christ light, that divinity within them as well. We share that divinity within us and those who have made their transition. The third piece that may not be so obvious within Day of the Dead is the facet of forgiveness. Those relatives that we honor can be our greatest teachers. That doesn't mean that we always got along with each and every one of those relatives, does it? But there is always a lesson to learn from them as well. And sometimes it's going to include that forgiveness process with even the memory of those folks who have transitioned. We're going to include some of that in our workshop on Saturday, the opportunity to, if something is still outstanding with that relationship you have, it's time to forgive. And there's mechanisms, there's steps, there's ways of doing that. Sometimes they can be our greatest challenge. And this is our opportune chance to practice forgiveness. And sometimes that's at the graveside. Sometimes those families do that as well. They laugh, they cry, and they forgive each other. So, back to our allegory. Who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Do you know? Somebody does. Shout it out. Nope. Bach is his last name. Richard Bach. Half credit. We got half credit over there. Half credit. Richard Bach. And he says that death is not an end, but a transition. Many lessons, like any good allegory, there are levels of understanding and teaching in any allegory, right? One of the allegories, and we'll talk about a little, was the bravery that, the get out and do it kind of attitude that Jonathan Livingston Seagull had. But the other piece of the allegory that's not so obvious, and I did some research on the web, and this doesn't always come out. Everyone likes to say, oh, Jonathan was brave, he did this, and that's the reason that he wrote that book. But Richard Bach also says that death is not an end, but a transition into another reality. Death is not an end. That was what he wanted us to learn when he wrote this book. It's a real short book, a novella you might even call it. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. Everything that limits us can be put aside is another of the lessons of that book. Jonathan Livingston Seagull's life is a metaphor of our own spiritual journey. We don't care about the seagull. We care about what it means for our life. What does it tell us within our life? It is a metaphor. It's an evolution that goes beyond this physical world. We know that this physical world is limiting. But we are limitless in both time and space. We are limitless. Jonathan's life in this book is reflected in 3 acts, and then he added in 2024 a 4th act. But let's talk about the first 3 parts of Jonathan's life. Part 1 was him living in the world and all the challenges and opportunities that he had for living. He wanted to fly. He wanted to perfect the flying within his life. And he goes beyond conformity and embraces spiritual growth within that first part of that. One of the what do you call it? The memes online. So I go online and I look and see what other people have learned from Jonathan Livingston Seagull, right? The greatest quote, the greatest number of people that have quoted him quote this, and I just had to laugh out loud. Jonathan says, in terms of his non-conformity, he says, life is more than looking for fish heads. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that applies to my life, but it is more than simply looking for fish heads. So part 1 was that. Part 1 was him learning how to fly, being nonconformist, being brave. That was the obvious piece of this allegory. Part 2 of this book was that after death, because he dies early within this book. After death, he moves into a higher reality. At first he thought, oh, this is heaven. I get to practice flying in heaven. This is what I enjoy. So this must be heaven, he asks the 2 teachers that show up for him. The 2, and I forget their name, the 2 other seagulls that help him in this transition. But they came around and told him that no, this isn't heaven, but you're going to learn and you're going to progress and you're going to mature spiritually, even beyond that which you were able to do in that life that you knew back on earth. And that was a celebration for them. He found teachers that would help him go beyond what he could even learn in this existence. He learned that his friends and family who were satisfied with the fish heads, that they would reincarnate back on earth. They had not learned what they were there for yet. But that was okay. That was okay. Part 3 talked about Jonathan's return back to earth as an enlightened teacher. Jonathan progressed, matured spiritually, came to a point where he decided he wanted to come back and teach as well. Within Buddhism, this is called a bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is an enlightened being who comes back to teach us. Was the Buddha a bodhisattva? Maybe. Was Jesus a bodhisattva? I don't know. We can talk about that at Pub Theology. Yes, we can. He teaches that we are limitless in our abilities. This is Jonathan coming back and teaching those that were satisfied just following the ships at sea and catching the fish heads. He's teaching them these lessons of life that he knew, that we are limitless in our abilities and that we were created good. Sound familiar? Was Jonathan of the Unity movement? No, I don't. That we are good, that our bodies are co-creation of thought. That was another thing. He taught that what we think, we become. What the thoughts we hold in our mind dictates who we are within this world. So hold the good ones, right? Don't obsess over the bad stuff going on. Hold the good thoughts is what Jonathan was telling his folks as he came back to teach them. And that we are free to learn. Here's the kicker. We are free to learn or not, because he realized that when he came back, he was not going to be able to reach certain people. They didn't want to hear his message. They didn't care. They were comfortable where they were at. So you are free to learn or not at your own pace. So you could go through those cycles until you reached, and then maybe up to that next transition. Or maybe never. And that was okay, is what he taught. You're okay wherever you are, and there is no guilt, there is no judgment of that process. Jonathan Livingston, I'm going to have to pull that book out. I know I'm going to have to buy the new one with the new section in it. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide. So the affirmation that I wrote, and know that when I write these affirmations, I write them for myself. That's just my little clue. I write them for myself and I share them with you. This is the message I want to take within my life and think about and repeat, usually for the next week. So this affirmation is that I honor my family and the gifts that they have given me as I progress through this world and the next. We feel that inhale and that release.